Hello everyone, my name is Kelley Li, and today I will be talking about virtual technology in education. Imagine instead of having to open up a textbook or listen to a long lecture, you instead put on a headset and are transported to a virtual world where you can experience historical moments at first hand, perform science experiments without need of supplies or worry about potential accidents, and even have access to various 3D models that you can study and interact with. So my point of view when giving this presentation today is as a computer science student at UNC Charlotte, and my purpose is to share information on how virtual technologies have been used and impacted in education. So now to go over some terms that will be used throughout this presentation, we will do a little match definition game, where I will show a term along with a couple of definitions, and you will just have to determine which definition matches the term shown. So here is the first word. It is virtual reality. And the options are A, technology that blends the physical reality in the digital world. B, enhanced version of reality created by technology to overlay digital information on an image of something being viewed through a device. And C, 3D computer-generated environment which can be explored and interacted with by a person. So which one out of these three definitions do you believe to be virtual reality? Yeah, it's one of those.
C.
Yes, the correct answer is C, 3D computer-generated environment which can be explored and interacted with by a person. So here is the next word. It is augmented reality. And now the two definitions we have left, which one do you believe is AR?
B.
Yes, the correct answer is B, enhanced version of reality created by technology to overlay digital information on image of something being viewed through a device. And the last word is mixed reality, and and yes, it is a technology that blends the physical reality in the digital world. And here are the correct terms with their correct definitions. And now to further understand these terms and the differences between them, I'll now show a picture and you'll have to determine which one is which. Is the picture VR, AR, or MR? So here is the first picture. Do you believe this to be VR, AR, or MR?
MR?
Yes, it is MR, as the phone is displaying a virtual object onto the physical world, and you can only interact with the digital object on the phone. And here is the next picture. Is it VR, AR, or MR?
VR?
Not quite.
Oh.
Not, is it AR?
Yeah.
Not correct. Yeah, it is MR, as the guy is able to interact with the virtual object using his hand, which is mixing both the physical and the virtual worlds. And here is the last picture. Is it?
VR.
Yeah, it is a VR. As a guy, you can see is fully immersed in a digital environment, which is shown on the laptop screen below. And here is a visual that further shows the differences between AR, MR, and VR. As you can see, AR is an overlay of digital elements on the real world. MR is where you can actually interact with those digital elements. And VR is where you are fully immersed in a digital environment. And,
I was going to say AR, so the first person can see the digital thing, while the second or third person cannot, right?
What do you mean for third?
Augmented reality. So the first person, they can see, go back to the slide real quick. So like you said, that first person can see that right there, but the second and third person cannot, right?
Well, you could.
Perspective-wise.
I mean, you could see all of these. It's just how you interact with the digital elements that determines which one is which. So now moving on to the history of virtual technologies. In 1956, Martin Haley created Sensorama, which is one of the first VR applications. It allowed people to feel like they're actually in a film. In 1968, Ivan Sutherland and his student Bob Sproul created the first VR AR head-mounted display, which will later lead to development of actual VR and AR VR headsets. And in 1996 is where one of the earliest studies of looking at using virtual technology in education. Christine Byrne conducts a study of utilizing VR as an educational tool. She had students study, interact, and assemble water molecules using VR, and she found that there is a higher level of interactivity, but it cannot replace traditional methods of learning. And as we approach the 21st century, there has been an increase in the research and development of virtual technologies. Examples are the Oculus Rift in 2012, the MetaQuest 2 in 2020, and the Apple Vision Pro in 2024. And now looking at actual examples of specific virtual technology used for educational purposes, we first have the Studiers 2, which is an AR application that allows students to study scientific models. Next we have is Project Exploring Collaborative Embodiment for Learning, otherwise known as Project Excel. It is a project that aims to develop virtual technologies such as VR and AR applications to help aid students in improving their mathematical skills. And then the next one is a Teach Live, which is not necessarily for students, but for new teachers. It allows them to simulate conducting and teaching live classrooms. And the last example is a Google Expeditions, which is where Google created various virtual environments and 3D objects that students can use to study and interact with if they have VR headsets. And now that we've looked through these examples, we'll look at two sides towards whether or not virtual technology should be implemented into education. For those who are for virtual technologies, they find that it creates immersive and engaging learning experiences, and it allows students to practice skills and procedures in a safe, controlled environment. An example is healthcare. Students in healthcare can practice performing surgeries using VR. And for those who are against virtual technology, one of the reasons is cost, as it is relatively more expensive compared to other educational tools, such as textbooks, as VR headsets can typically go for about $300 each as the cheapest cost, and it could get quite pricey if schools are trying to buy enough headsets per classroom. And the next reason is the physical effects. Using VR headsets for long periods of time can cause effects such as motion sickness and eye strains. And the last reason is a lack of research on long-term effectiveness. Many of these virtual technologies that we use today have only been developed and released in the past 1 or 2 decades, and it's still continuing to improve and evolve. And since it's not currently implemented fully into education, it makes those weary about whether or not it is effective to use virtual technologies in education rather than just sticking to how education is currently being taught. And now I'd like to ask a question. Are you yourself for or against implementing virtual technology into education?
Is there choice where you can be in between, if you're neither against it or neither for it, like you're independent? Or you have to pick one or the other?
I guess you could, but in this case I decided to just go with one or two sides. But it's fine if you don't have a stance.
I'm for it. With students, some students just aren't able to pay attention. I was one of those students, and I think a more catered educational experience towards a student technologically could really enhance their abilities to retain knowledge and stuff. And it's also much more cheaper because you can't really do that within a physical classroom. So if you can provide them those resources, they could really boost their education.
Same as John, I'm also for it. For example, let's say a student wants to, pet a dinosaur. Dinosaurs don't exist anymore. Let's say you want to look at the autonomy of a human or something. We don't have a dead body to go, touch and things of that nature. So I'm for it for learning purposes, and just for, let's say school doesn't have funding, they can emulate some experiences for students to actually go out and use.
Yes.
I would say I'm against it. just like we've seen with, I guess, tablets and computers and those things, while they came in with the intention of being used for education and furthering the educational process, it ended up actually hindering, as we've seen with previous presentations, education as a whole. I also feel like a lot of schools are underfunded and trying to, I guess, allocate funds towards virtual education and technology, because we would have to create systems for it, programs and such, and that would be very costly, not only for just underfunded schools, but just schools in general. And I feel like there could be better uses, or better uses for that money.
Yeah.
I'm also against using VR tech, and I do agree a lot with what Alan has said, because when it comes to standardization that would be necessary for most education systems in the West, it's going to be very hard to push out VR technology, especially if we're considering like the funding that certain school might be able to receive. So you might be better served using software or like laptops or computers that are in the classroom to kind of like provide visualizations compared to just VR. It's a lot more usable. And on a further note, there are like a lot of moves from like other education systems and governments to stay away from like digital technology. If you're not aware, Sweden is like doing a push to go back to using handwritten or books as a medium for learning rather than screens. And I also would say that using those old or more classical mediums help encourage a greater sense of imagination rather than just simply showing children images or things to explore.
Those are, you have no?
I feel like this comparison to laptops and tablets in particular isn't super valid, because for laptops and tablets, it's a lot easier to, like if you just have it on your desk as a student, it's a lot easier to just have that and be doing whatever on it, compared to if every student had like a VR headset. It'd be quite a lot more difficult for them to be, getting distracted with the whole VR headset. But even aside from that, I think it could be beneficial for, like maybe not every student has a VR headset with them at all times, but imagine if a school had a set of them that teachers could like rent out for a day, or like pick a particular class that they're going to have these VR headsets for, and have like a day where all the students use them for some kind of demo. I think that would be purely beneficial and probably address the issues that you two have raised with issues with like distractions, and it would be probably not that expensive if it was just one set for the whole school where each class got them for different periods. So I think there's definitely ways to have it without falling into the pitfalls of other technology.
Any other? All right, that was great answers you all gave. So now moving on to the harms and benefits of specific groups. For students, they are benefited in that they do receive engaging and immersive lessons and are able to practice skills in safer environments. And they are harmed in health risks and in over-reliance, as students may rely on virtual technologies to the point where they can only learn with it. And for tech companies, they are benefited in that there is an increase in demand for virtual technology, which also means that they earn more money. And for educational institutions, as mentioned by Alan, they do have to pay high costs for hardware and also invest in creating programs and applications that are designed for educational purposes. So now for the significance. The micro-significance, it increases motivation, attention, and engagement on an individual level. And for the macro-significance, it redefines educational systems, as education has been changing, as we went from only using paper and pencil to using laptops, computers, smartphones, and tablets, and now to potentially incorporating virtual technology. It leads me to my conclusion. As technology advances, it will continue to change the future of education. Thank you so much for listening, and here is my contact information.